Hey everyone, Pat Reinhart here from Conductor, and welcome to the March edition of 3030. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it because we only have 30 minutes. So, what are we going to be talking about today? So, was there an update on February 7th? Yes, there totally was, but at the end of the day, there's actually another one going on right now, but we'll talk about that a little bit. DMOZ has gone the way of the dinosaur. So sad, another relic kind of bites the dust. Going to talk about voice search a little bit at the C3 conference last week, which a lot of you were at. Great seeing a lot of you. I actually got to join a panel about this. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Google launched Hotel Rich cards, which is pretty cool. There's a bug in AMP reporting, which a lot of people have been talking about. A lot of people have been calling me about, and a little quirky thing that's actually being tested in the local pack right now, which I just have an opinion on and I kind of want to talk about. So let's jump right in. So February 7th, something that a lot of folks are talking about. Was there an update? There was. It was another one of the phantom updates, quote unquote phantom quality, whatever you want to call them. But this was something that affected a lot of people, right? And a lot of people were talking about this. Now, what's interesting is that I'm sure people are reading and noticing right now that there's a lot of fluctuation going on in the results as of yesterday. So Google definitely released something yesterday. If you go to Search Engine Roundtable or any of the other news outlets, you're going to see that it was about links. So it looks like it's something that's more geared towards the Penguin, filter. But that is what's happening right now. I'll learn more about that and report back next month. But what happened on February 7th looks like something that's a little bit more like a quality update. Odd that Google didn't come out and just say it because they've been doing that lately. It's a little weird that they have a little bit of a veil in front of them and they're not just kind of admitting it. But at the end of the day, this kind of falls into the phantom category, but it looks like it was an overall quality update. And you can see that Algoru and Mozcast did have higher than normal kind of temperatures on that day and activity on that around that date. So Glenn Gabe did a really good deep dive, and when this presentation gets circulated afterwards, you should take a look at it and kind of get really in-depth with what this is if you're seeing anything negative or if you're seeing anything positive. You want to know what's working as well as what's not working, right? But it looks like, it lays out that it targeted, low-quality content, low-quality user engagement. Nothing, no surprise there. That's something that Google's been, dialing up and down for years and years now. Interesting one here that he found that if you had an aggressive amount of ads, that this was actually starting to affect you a little bit more. Now, that's not to say that Google has never said anything or released anything about ads. There have been specific updates regarding how your site uses ads and how many ads are on a page and how much, how in your face of them, if it's an interstitial, if it's something that's just all over the place and kind of taking away from the good, from the good content that you have. But he noted that this actually had, this definitely had a major impact on folks who had quote-unquote aggressive ads. So that's something to keep in mind. If you are a publisher or anyone who is using AdSense or selling any kind, or you're part of an affiliate network or things of that nature, take a look at how you're using your ads, because it looks like this really, kind of focused in on that, because the next point kind of speaks to that as well, over monetization. So it looks like Google was cracking down on folks who are really, serving a lot of ads and, trying to monetize their site a little too aggressively. So, low quality content, low quality user engagement, that is black and white, every quality update that's come across the books, right? This is actually something that's targeting the way that you're monetizing your site. So it's something that you should be, thinking about and really taking to heart, that if you are someone who monetizes your site, and you should, there's nothing wrong with that, but, be very careful with how much you're doing that, how many ads you have per page, where they're placed, how large they are, how much of the page they take up. Because a lot of folks don't think about that, it's just like, well, I'm a publisher, I use AdSense, I make money off my site. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're doing it too aggressively, that can harm you. And also UX barriers. So that kind of goes back to interstitials and things of that nature if you're covering up. So nothing surprising there. So what should you do? if you're seeing things, move in a negative direction, or saw things move in a negative direction, and the update that just rolled out yesterday, you are seeing further negative direction, you should really think about the direction that your site is going, and this should be yet another warning of what direction, that you're headed, right? So if you're constantly not really surviving or faring well against these algorithm updates, while again, you should not be a slave to them. You should not be like, how do I optimize towards an algorithm? You should be optimizing towards your customers and what your customers' wants and needs are. But, this should be a further warning to you that something is not right on your site. Your site should not be fluctuating wildly every time Google does anything, right? These updates happen every day. There's ones that are more major than others. That's why we report on them. You should be aware of them. But again, you really should think about course correcting this. If you feel that your site has a lot of ads on them, or it's very ad heavy, or that your ads are taking up the majority of your site's pages, then you probably should try to dial back on that. If you have a lot of interstitials that are still popping up, probably time to take care of that. It's probably what's hurting you. If you still have a lot of low quality content, which is very easy, to determine, go pick up deep crawl. They'll tell you what pages are thin. They'll tell you what pages are duplicative. They'll tell you a million different things about what's good and bad about your site. Go fix those things. Stop ignoring it. I'm seeing a lot of folks just continuously ignoring these things and ignoring these signs, and you shouldn't. You should be on top of this stuff. Now that you know that these things are happening, then you should take action against that. If you know that there's areas of your site that you're not quite happy with, now is the time. The time is now to go and fix them, make them better, make them more unique, make them stronger, because these algorithm updates are never going to stop. Like I said, one is rolling out right now. Now everyone is saying it's about links, so we don't know where everyone's going to land right there. Everyone's in flux right now, so I'm not talking about that. This is the one that happened a month ago, and you should have landed where you're going to land outside after that one, because they already dialed up, dialed back, so we know where everyone kind of stands right now. So kind of take if you did poorly, take that as a warning that you should change something. If you did well, keep doing what you're doing. So that's something to keep in mind. So moving on. Kind of sad, DMOZ, another internet relic, has closed. Now, any SEO, worth their weight was, definitely back in the day, especially folks who are relics like me, who've been doing this like 13, 14 years, have interacted with DMOZ at one point or another in their careers, right? So back on June 5th, 1998, DMOZ opened their doors. I believe another company started in 1998. So, DMOZ is as old as Google is. That's how long they have been around, right? Now, they were probably around a little bit too long, right? Because we know that, directories are not really a thing anymore, right? Being in a directory, this is how, for anyone who doesn't know, DMOZ, is one of these old school directories. One of the things that it was one of those boxes that you check from an SEO standpoint like 10 years ago. It's like, hey, if you get in these high quality directories, you should be, this is something that you should do. This is an SEO must do. Of course, these days we know that directories are not really anything worth their weight. So it's one of these things that was just kind of funny that it was still around. It's kind of cool that it was still around. There were still people dedicating their time to it. The thing that was unique about DMOZ was that it was organized and ran by humans. There was no machines running this. There was no computers running or doing things automatically. It was maintained and ordered by humans. So again, this is another step towards the rise of the machines, as we all could probably worry. But this is something. Why do you care about this? You probably don't, and you probably shouldn't. This is more something. This is more of a love letter for me and SEO folks who have been in the business for a long time. DMOZ is one of those things that a lot of people used, and a lot of people, like, if Moz Local still pulls DMOZ in. And this is something that it's just kind of like, man, DMOZ is closing. That sucks. The Open Directory project. This is something. So on March 14th, which is only 5 days away, another thing that's been around forever is gone. It's like Yahoo's directory. That's something that's how the internet was organized, and it's something that's gone away, which is kind of sad, but not something that's super surprising, because And again, if you guys get this presentation afterwards, you're going to see that, Google came out and, said, like, yeah, directories don't do anything for your rankings. And directories don't, they've become became such a spam tactic, that it's one of those things that became obsolete. But again, DMOZ deserves a send-off. And, good job, DMOZ, after all these years. It's been a long time. Well, you will be missed, though you were, not really used that much and not really worth it, for the last several years. So that's a shame. But hey, it is what it is. That's progress, right? So at C3 last week, and for anyone who wasn't there, it was an amazing event, and we're having a virtual, version of C3 that I'll get to later in this presentation. But something that I got the opportunity to do was sit on a panel at the end of day 2 and talk about voice search, right? And it's one of those things where I don't think a lot of folks, a lot of folks are talking about it, but I think it's one of those things that a lot of people don't know that the answer box actually pulls that voice search, a lot of stuff that Echo, or Alexa and Google Home and Cortana, when people ask them some basic questions, I don't think a lot of people know that they pull those answers from answer boxes and answer box, those direct responses, those direct response boxes that all search engines pretty much have, but Google, coined the term answer box. And it is true, it's one of those things, and it's something, that a lot of people don't think of. And, so why bring this up, right? Because it's pretty cool, and I think that I was reading a study recently that said that in the next 5 years, voice recognition and the use of voice recognition will double. And that's a lot, that's crazy, and I've talked in the past, I believe the last 30-30, or maybe it was one that was, maybe it was a couple months ago, where I was talking about, reporting on voice search, right? Can people, when are we going to be able to get, to know what people are asking Alexa or what people are asking Google Home, right? Because that would be really cool when someone goes, hey, Alexa, you know what I mean? Hey, Alexa, where can I buy XYZ? Or, what's the closest XYZ near me, right? It would be great to know that so that you could optimize to those questions, right? And I think that, if you didn't need another reason to, go for the answer box, this is a big one, because this is like the future, right? And I'm not trying to talk like this is the future, but like when you think about it, this is the future of search, or it's a future, it's a future area that we're all going to be playing in, right, is voice search. But, at the end of the day, I think, answer box is coming up a lot. It's something that everyone should be optimizing for. Which I'm sure is not news to anybody, but the click-through rates are insane for answer box. It's really great engagement. It's really good branding too. I work with a client who has answer boxes for almost all of their queries. Right, they're an e-commerce site, very well-known e-commerce site. And what's great about it is that their product pages, some of their product pages are getting the answer box. But along with that, their supporting documentation, for those products that are also getting answer boxes. So not only on the product query are they getting one, they're also getting on, it's like for a sunscreen, let's say, right? For like nano zinc, oxide sunscreen, very specific type of sunscreen. They have one that shows up, and actually a picture of the product shows up there too. So not only in Google's results are they getting that answer box with what it is and what its functions are, they're also getting that product image that actually links out to the product page. And that is strong. That is strong branding. That is something that I would want for all of my products. And that's, that's just an example. So someone said, so wouldn't it be great to know, like, hey, Alexa, where can I get that kind of sunscreen? If you knew that people were asking that and you sold that particular brand or that particular type of sunscreen, that you could optimize for it, further, or optimize for the answer box, or create, a supporting piece of content that answered a lot of questions about it, I would want to know that, and that's something that's going to happen. That's something that's going to happen in the very near future, and it's something that everyone should be thinking of. You already should be wanting to show up for the answer boxes, right? That's something everyone on this webinar should want to do. You should learn more about it if you're not doing it. You should learn where you show up already, and that's and you should also know where in the universe, answer boxes show up for your products or your services or whatever you do, right? And Searchlight can help you do that. But at the end of the day, it's definitely something, from a voice search standpoint that a lot of people may not be thinking about, right? And that's really what the future, that's the future horizon of search is within voice search. So it's something that everyone should be thinking about. So moving on from that. Something that came up, which is pretty cool, is that Google launched, hotel rich cards, right? And everyone, so if you're in the hospitality segment, you're probably like, yeah, they did this a few months ago, man. What are you talking about? And at the end of the day, it's actually that those were just that these were AMP-based hotel listing that they released, right? That had the rich cards, and they weren't actually regular ones, right? So these are actually regular rich cards, not the AMP version. So this is for anyone, this is for anyone that can use it, not specifically with AMP, which is pretty cool. Right? And this is something that everyone in the hospitality area should definitely be paying attention to. They're pretty cool. They're very straightforward. I have a very blurry picture here, and I apologize for that. It's one of the only ones I could get to generate and find. But, at the end of the day, this is one of those things where you can see a lot, right? You can see, ratings and reviews, address, what kinds of rooms you have, if you're pet friendly. And it's just another way to stand out in the SERPs. And it's something that, I was actually looking for a hotel the other day. I have to go to Minnesota on Monday. And, it's one of those things where, this is something that every hotel and, resort should be playing in, right? It's just, get that schema markup in there, make sure that you're doing it properly. But at the end of the day, I think it's something that's really valuable to a lot of folks, in the hospitality, and a lot of folks who may not know it's a thing yet. I mean, the AMP pages came out a few months ago, but seeing this, it's definitely something that this is definitely something that everyone in the hospitality should be thinking about. So just wanted to get that out there because now it's not just AMP pages that are getting these rich cards. It's standard rankings as well and standard listings as well. So something to think about. Something that you should if you're in the hospitality sector. Something that's been coming up a lot lately, a lot of questions, a lot of things that I've been hearing is that AMP reporting is all screwed up, and it's and that's just me being true. This is something that a lot of folks this is something that a lot of folks don't probably are a lot of folks are experiencing. It looks like all of the reporting for AMP is not reporting properly, and it's really bloating the numbers that are coming in, through Google Analytics, right? So Christian Oliveira, who's an SEO consultant, a known, a technical SEO consultant, did, start to get a lot of questions about this and did a very, very in-depth, long breakdown of the problems, which you can see here. Credit where credit's due. Go and read this if this is something that you believe that you are experiencing. But at the end of the day, a quick breakdown of what's going on is that and I'm going to read this because it's like just reading it straight up is exactly what just so you guys know. A unique visitor potentially can be reported as up to 4 different people when accessing AMP pages. So that's not good, of course. So 1 equals 4. So that's where your bloated sessions are coming from. When a visitor navigates from an AMP page to a regular page in the site, it causes a new session to be generated. So that's not good. Okay, even though it's the same session. So actually, if you're going from page to page, they're actually generating a new session, which isn't good. So that's a nightmare for attribution. Your bounce rate will appear higher than normal because you're getting all these new sessions that are technically being seen as them leaving the page, even though you're going to another page within the site. It's actually being seen as a new session, so it's actually creating a bounce, which is not right. Page views per session will appear lower, when an AMP person moves from an AMP page to a regular page in a single session, another big problem. And visitors who come to AMP page from search and then go to another page will appear as if they are new visitors coming from referral traffic rather than search. So there's a whole mess of problems here, right? So I just read off a whole bunch of problems. So this is something to be aware of if you're using AMP, right? This is not good. This is Google knows. That's the good thing. Google knows that this is a problem, but at the end of the day, this is something that they said cannot be fixed easily. So my guess is this is going to persist for months until they figure this out. So if you're using AMP, be aware that there is a bug in the reporting for Google Analytics, right? So you should be using Google Search Console, Google Search Console and all that. But it appears that if you're pulling everything in, it's bloating your sessions. So there's a problem here. So just be aware of that if you're using AMP. And something that I noticed, I saw an article on this which I thought was pretty cool, but also was pretty odd and unnecessary, was that in the Google Local Pack, as if we didn't need more stuff in the Local Pack, Google is showing results based on knowing your location X minutes ago. So let's say you were looking for a bar, it would say that these bars were near you 12 minutes ago. So that's something. I guess it's cool. I'm not sure what its purpose is, because if I was somewhere 12 minutes ago, I would have wanted to. I don't know why I would want to know something that was open 12 minutes, like 12 minutes ago from where I currently am. I really, when I'm looking for something, I want to know what's open within like walking distance of me, or within easily, right around me at that moment. Not necessarily based on where I was 10, 12, 15 minutes ago. So that one's a little weird. It's a little weird. What do you do here? It's nothing. It's really an oddity to me. I mean, you can refresh your location, which is fine, but it kind of seems like an extra step, and which is surprising to me, because Google is so careful about their UX and about their user engagement stuff that I'm very surprised that they're adding something that would have a user manually click on something to update their location, where they're all kind of about hyperlocal and where you are at that exact minute and telling you where to go, rather than telling you where you could have gone 12 minutes ago. So I'm not really sure what the purpose behind it is, but hey, I'm not Google, right? And Google does a lot of weird stuff for a lot of weird reasons. So, with that said, I also want to announce that we are, for anyone who didn't get a chance to visit C3, which was an awesome event, on Wednesday, April 12th, registration is free. We are doing virtual C3, right, where you can watch all these great presentations and see all these great speakers and get all the great content that we had in here, for free, and come in and see what, if you didn't get a chance to come to New York, this is definitely your chance to come in and see all the great content that we had to offer. So definitely sign up for it. I think it's it's going to be a great thing, and it's free. You can't beat that. And we had a lot of great speakers there's a lot of great speakers and a lot of great content that you can absorb here. So something to consider is going there and seeing and hearing out all that. So with that said, thank you so much for joining us again this month. I love doing these things, and I'm going to get to a bunch of questions right now because we have a bunch coming in. So any question that I do not get to, as always, I will email you afterwards and answer it. If I ever missed your question, I apologize. Email me again, and we will get to that immediately. But let's get into some questions here. So here's a good one. What happens if the query doesn't have an answer box in regards to voice search pulling from answer box? Phenomenal question. So this is kind of still a black box type thing that we don't know. So it's something that a lot of folks from Google said, like, if there's a direct response box, an answer box, Bing, because if you ask Siri, they're using, all these things are using Bing. If there isn't one, we're not really, they haven't released where that's coming from. My guess is it's an algorithmic thing where they compile answers from different sites, or, just from different knowledge bases, Wikipedia, what have you, Quora, or something like that, and they just use top answers from there or top information from there. Much like how they generate the knowledge graph, they may use the knowledge graph as well, but we don't know the exact answer to that question yet, but that's something that we're hoping to learn in the near future. But great question, but that's what a lot of the conversation's been around. Where are all these, these questions, these answers to these questions coming from? My guess is from knowledge graph, Wikipedia, Quora, things of that nature, where they're pulling like top answers or popular answers, like any other aggregator would, and then just translating into voice search. But don't have an exact answer there, but that's my best guess. Here's a great one. How can you best approach the task of optimizing a page to trigger an answer box result? Phenomenal question. So really, it's asking the question and then answering that question in a very long form way. So it's not just like, hey, this is the answer. You're like, what time is it in Dallas, right? And then you get the little thing that just shows you what the time is in Dallas, or what's the best, or what's the best sunscreen to use for my kid, right? If you want to try to go for the answer box, you want to try to make it a little bit more long form and make that answer very robust. And that's kind of like, hey, you ask the question and then you answer it to the nth degree. Use bulleted lists lists. Answer box loves bulleted lists. Use very precise, what the question is, and then answer it. Try to use bulleted lists. Give the top 10, like if it's a top 10 list or something like that. Top 10 top 10 best movies, of all time, right? Give the top 10 best movies in the list, but then why don't you describe each movie or give a synopsis of each of those movies? So then that easily makes that, or if it's an ingredient, if it's a recipe or something like that, talk about the recipe, give the recipe directly, but then walk through the process in a little bit more of a robust fashion. That's typically how you get the answer box to generate, is to ask the question and answer it in a long format, and also use lists, kind of explain as much as you can, throw some pictures in there. Google likes really well thought out, really long form content to try and get the answer box. You will see it where, simple sites with simple answers will, like Quora will come up for a lot of it, which is just a question and an answer. But you got to remember, a lot of that stuff has a lot of comments on it, has a lot of action. So it's kind of a popularity contest, most like everything else in Google. But at the end of the day, that's typically how we tell folks to generate the answer box, is to ask that question and then answer it in a very long form fashion while utilizing bulleted lists and things of that nature. So let's keep going. Oh, this is a cool thing. Any predictions on how soon AMP is going to be a ranking factor? Great question, and there was an article that came out, today or yesterday, I believe, that was talking about AMP not being a ranking factor yet, but maybe in the future. So here, I believe within the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to see AMP as a ranking factor, and the fact that if you're using AMP, it's going to be good for your site from a ranking perspective because it's adopting a technology that Google gave you. It's definitely something that you should, it's definitely something to be thought about, right? But I'm thinking that we're going to be seeing within the next 12 to 18 months, just like schema data. I think schema data already is a ranking factor if you use it. I think because it increases, click-through, which we know increases rankings. So I think that that's something that's already technically a ranking factor, even though they still say it's not. But I think AMP, you're going to see with how highly it's been adopted. And I don't know if anyone saw yesterday, across Asia, we're going to see 1 billion, AMP pages roll out very soon. So there's a big push in that part of the world, to go with AMP. So it's just going to get bigger. And so my prediction is within the next 12 to 18 months, we are going to see that, right? And that's what I believe. We saw a drop in keyword rankings 3 weeks after the Phantom update, February 07. Could this be related? Absolutely. It takes, these updates take, at least 10 days to roll out globally, and then things are still shifting for a couple of weeks after that. So that's probably something that's definitely something that is going to, that's probably it's probably something that's going on with you, unfortunately. If you have a more specific question about, or you want us to look into something more specific, email me separately, and we'll look into it for you, but that's probably definitely what's going on. Here's a good question. Is there a tool for analyzing what voice search volumes are across different fields? Not yet. But that's the next thing, right? The voice search measurement is definitely the next thing. Google's definitely going to be able to report on this through Search Console I think within the next year. So, stay tuned for that. And we are at time. Everyone, thank you so much, as always. Humbled, as always. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the interaction. Thank you for your time. Always humbled by the response. And we will see you next month. Looking forward to it. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk soon.